I call this meeting of the this public meeting of the Board of Education for School District 72 for February 22nd, 2022 to order. We'll begin with the Chairperson's remarks. And good evening. I acknowledge on behalf of the Board of Trustees that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Likwitah people. I am John Kerr, Chairperson of the School District 72 Board of Education. In attendance this evening are Vice Chair Kat Eddy and Trustees Joyce McMahon, Richard Franklin, Susan Wilson, Daryl Hagan, and Shannon Briggs. Also in attendance are Superintendent Dr. Jeremy Morrow, Associate Superintendents Morgan Kyle and Phil Sisnick, as well as Secretary Treasurer Kevin Patrick. Present also are Natalie Crawshaw, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent, and Secretary Treasurer, Jennifer Patrick, Manager of Communications, and providing technical support is Jonathan Carriere, IT Technician. The board is meeting virtually this evening under advice from the Office of the District Health Officer. The board will reassess how meetings are held when further information becomes available. Please note there is a 20-second production delay between the live event that you are viewing and the meeting participants. The question and answer function is open for questions on agenda items for this meeting. Questions that are posed during the meeting will be addressed at the end of the session. I trust that everyone had the opportunity to enjoy Family Day yesterday, given the stresses that everyone has experienced over the past almost 2 years and the long stretch between the end of winter and spring breaks. A day that provides the opportunity to enjoy a long weekend with family is most appreciated. Today is budget day for the province. I've attempted to find information on education funding in budget summaries that have been published. This gives me great concern, but it is early and the situation for K-12 education funding should become clearer soon. Over the past year, the board has made every effort to convince the Minister of Education that a replacement for Cedar Elementary School is long overdue. The facility does not support the demands for 21st century education, and our children deserve better. Every child deserves a safe and stimulating place to learn, and what we wish for students at Cedar Elementary, we wish for all public school students in the province. Very shortly, the Ministry of Education will announce capital funding for the upcoming year. The board's hope is that Cedar Elementary will be on the list for replacement, although, given the province's financial circumstances of the past year, that might not happen. The board continues to hope that our case for the replacement of Cedar Elementary has been strong enough to convince the minister that this request is necessary for the district to provide a strong education for our Cedar students. Finally, on Friday, School District 72 staff took part in a day of professional development. These days are extremely important for our staff to collaborate and learn with the goal of improving professional practice. It is my hope that everyone had a meaningful and enlightening day. Our students can only benefit from these learnings. Thank you. We'll move on then to Superintendent's remarks. Dr. Morrow.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairperson Kerr, and I'll echo a few of your comments tonight. I too hope that our staff, students, and community had a wonderful Family Day long weekend and were able to create new memories and share some time with family and loved ones. I want to recognize that tomorrow, February the 23rd, is Pink Shirt Day, and we are hoping that everyone will join us in wearing something pink to show our commitment to providing every child with an education free from discrimination, bullying, and harassment. Pink Shirt Day was inspired by an act of kindness in a small town in Nova Scotia where 2 teenage boys organized a high school protest by wearing pink in sympathy with a grade 9 boy who had been bullied for wearing a pink shirt. It is now a movement celebrated across the globe. But tonight I also want to recognize that the intention of Pink Shirt Day is so insufficient if it only happens one day a year. As a school district, we are deeply committed to ensuring every child feels safe, accepted, and respected every day. And as Trustee Kerr mentioned, there was a professional development day just this past Friday. And I think often people wonder what teachers and other staff are up to on that day. So I'm going to share a list of some of the learning that our staff did. I don't believe it's a comprehensive list, but it'll give you all a good understanding of what some of the staff invested time in on Friday. So There was a full-day mental health literacy workshop, which had approximately 315 staff members attend from all locations, or from a variety of locations as well. We were able to invite some community partners to participate in that workshop. Penfield School had a guest drummer and made high drums for their students. Staff at Georgia Park attended the South Island Regional Professional Development event called Tapestry, where they listened to a keynote by Caleb Child, and then attended a workshop by Jennifer Katz called Ensouling Our Schools, the TRC Call for Trauma-Informed Care, grades K to 5. Carey High engaged in a defining goalpost for assessment. They looked deeply at the language of the curriculum and thinking about how to turn curricular competencies into learning progressions. They had some of their own staff present, and then they worked closely with coordinator Rachel Frederick. Many school primary teachers met in school-based groups to explore literacy resources, as recommended by the Literacy Committee, and they worked with their literacy leads as well as coordinators Audra and Christine. Others attended Early Years Writing Conference and met to discuss how to support literacy instruction in the classroom. Robron staff completed the Paddling Together workshop with Kathy Camilleri. There were many educators on Friday who were working on Monique Grace Smith's course, The Ripple Effect of Resilience, and many of our music and Indigenous Ed department were scheduled to attend the Everything is Connected conference through UVic, and Ocean Grove spent time in the morning learning about physical literacy with Georgina Knox. So that's just a sampling of some of the learning opportunities that staff engaged in last week. I just wanted to provide a quick update as well that when we did return after winter break, Public Health did let us know to anticipate significant student and staff absences. That is what we observed. It peaked close to the end of January, but we are now starting to see much less absences with student and staff. So I share that we have cautious optimism that we will return to a more normal absentee rate. And then lastly, because I just got a text from my own daughter, I want to give congratulations to the senior girls basketball team at Carey High who just qualified for the provincials. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morrow. That's terrific. Okay, we'll move on to approval of the minutes, and I will point out that we need to make one alteration on page 2 of the public board meeting minutes for February 1st, and that is item 2220. It should be Vice Chair Eddy in that entry, not Vice Chair Kerr. So if we could get that amended, then we'll move to the motion, which will, the suggested motion is that the minutes of the meeting of February 1, 2022 are hereby approved as amended. Do we have a mover for that? Trustee Franklin, Trustee Eddy. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hands or say aye. Yes, we have a couple people that I can't see.
Aye.
All right, the motion is carried.
Aye.
All right, the motion really is carried. Okay, we will move on then to item 4. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none. Are there any additions or alterations to the agenda? All right, then the next item will be then approval of the agenda. And just let me get my paper here. The suggested motion is that the agenda is hereby approved as circulated. Moved by Trustee Franklin, seconded by Trustee McMahon. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hands or say aye if I don't see you.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. We'll move on to item 7, which will be the report of board decisions from the February 22nd, 2022 confidential board meeting, and that's Vice Chair Eddy.
So in this evening's confidential board meeting, we've discussed matters of legal and staffing. We didn't make it through our agenda, so we will be returning after this meeting to complete our confidential agenda.
Thank you, Vice Chair Eddy. Point out that this is an unusual confluence of numbers today. Any way you write it, it's got lots of 2s and 0s in it. Okay, we will move then to item 8, which will be public submissions, and that's Ms. Duarte and Ms. Craddock, QP 723 Administrative Assistant Peer Mentor position. So are we ready to go?
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, fantastic. Just let me see if I can present 1 second. Okay, does it look okay on your end? And
Yep.
I can't see anybody now.
We
Okay,
can see
perfect.
it.
Perfect, thank you. So hello, my name is Jelena. I'm an admin assistant for the school district, as well as the clerical shop steward. I am joined here with President Andrea Craddock. Out of concerns from the department and a subsequent working group, the decision was made by the department for me to come and present to the board. So what do administrative assistants do? This was a quote that was submitted by an elementary administrative assistant. Administrative assistants in a school are like air traffic controllers, constantly multitasking and looking after the wants and needs of students, staff, admin, the district, parents, volunteers, and visitors. Administrative assistants build respectful relationships with students, staff, and they are the face of the school, the first person you meet and see. We provide ongoing support to administration. We maintain and track finances. We help to create a respectful school culture, being the first impression of the school. We set up students' calendars each year, and we maintain student records, which become particularly important as they graduate. Oops, sorry. And how has the role of an administrative assistant changed? The work-life balance has become a much greater priority for employees. There is a desire for training and the ability to transition into different positions. People are not staying in their positions for 10+ years anymore. They are trying out new positions within the district. Job duties have dramatically changed over the last 5 to 10 years, requiring a higher level of training and understanding of new systems. Oh no. Sorry. The implementation of MyEdBC, the information system used by Ministry of Education for tracking student data, has also been implemented. We are currently using multiple programs as we transition systems. Our jobs require significantly more reporting, and policy and procedures are constantly changing, and it requires additional time and energy to meet new requirements. A clerical working group was established after the school district employee engagement survey results were released to explore the ongoing challenges of the department. The department was surveyed to determine the main concerns and explore potential remedies. Out of the working group discussions, the idea of an administrative peer mentor was put forward. While we recognize the help desk positions are critically important in providing support to administrative assistants, they lack the time to provide hands-on support and mentorship. The peer mentor could provide input on how changes affect things on the ground and be an avenue to explore ideas, clarify issues, and provide mentorship for newer employees or those new to positions. The pilot EA mentor position has exceeded expectations and is providing valuable unifying resources, which we would like to duplicate in the clerical department. Lead hands have been established throughout the district in every department, with the exception of the clerical department. We see this as a valuable tool that would greatly benefit the department. So what are the roles of a peer mentor, and what would that look like? The peer mentor would provide support for new employees and employees new to positions. They would flag any concerns, provide constructive feedback, hands-on training, and best practices. The mentor would create efficiencies by standardizing practices while researching and developing resources. They would help with developing clerical manuals specific to each position with up-to-date information for casuals. They would track relevant trends to recognize the need for potential changes and consultation with management. The mentor will be a point person to direct employees to resources, coordinate with the help desks, management, and other training entities. They would develop a clear avenue between employee concerns and management. They would help provide guidance to the departments through consultation and direction from the Assistant Secretary Treasurer. This person would be accessible by staff, management, or administration for assistance via online request form. The following are the values and goals of the clerical department, reflecting on the district strategic priority 1, student success, helping students improve personal and academic achievement by modeling positive interactions, addressing student concerns, and referring to resources. The peer mentor will implement these goals and values through shadowing, modeling, and bridging between the department and management. Strategic priority 2, building a culture of learning and wellness. Administrative assistants work together to strive for cohesive teams across all roles and site to help deliver on the expectations of the community and provide the best learning environment for students. We will individually and collectively provide positive contributions to the district with a clear purpose for personal accountability. We will uphold the district's framework to support students and staff's mental health and well-being. Strategic priority 3, honoring Indigenous perspectives. We continue to strengthen relationships with Indigenous students, staff, and guardians to build better cultural understanding and belonging within schools. We collectively and individually continue to take ownership of educating ourselves of the history and culture of the Indigenous peoples. We help improve student achievement by modeling positive interaction, addressing students' concerns, and making referrals when necessary. How would the position be awarded? Similar to the EA peer mentor, the position will require a combination of skills, abilities, qualifications. Consideration will be given to seniority. The pilot would run for 1 year with regular review and adjustments as necessary. I would like to take a moment to thank the board for taking the time to listen to our presentation. Hopefully, I was able to show the reasoning why a peer mentor would be a valuable asset to the clerical department, and consideration will be given to piloting this position. I'll now hand it over to Andrea to fill out anything that I've left out. Just 1 sec.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to Jolina for putting together this presentation. Her and I have worked together for a considerable period of time between pulling together the working group, surveying the department members, and then coming up with some solutions. I'm a firm believer that you don't ask for something when there's a concern without having the idea of some solutions going forward. While QP absolutely appreciates that the board has put in a couple of really tough years with all kinds of extra economic demands due to the pandemic, we're hopeful that you'll see and see it from our perspective that potentially this could end up saving the board money by helping to create efficiencies, as Jolina mentioned, as well as helping to streamline new employees and new to position employees and getting them up to speed and perhaps trying some new ideas around efficiencies as well. The EA mentor position has, as Jolina said, exceeded our expectations. We will be doing a presentation to the board on that shortly as well. And again, I'm hopeful that you will give this some thought. And thank you so much. I'll hand it back to Jolina if there's any questions.
Does anyone have any questions of either Ms. Craddock or Ms. Duarte? Okay, Trustee Eddy.
Just not a question, but more so a comment. Thank you, Julina, for being an advocate on behalf of your employee group. The work that executive administrative assistants and administrative assistants do in our school is very much so the point person for each school as parents and caregivers come in, and we're deeply grateful for the work that you do and acknowledge the challenges that admin assistants are facing as we switch systems to better align with the Ministry of Education, MyEdBC. So thank you on behalf of the board for the work that you do in the field.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Any other comments? Okay, well, I would like to finish with a comment. Thank you both, Ms. Duarte, Ms. Craddock, for your thoughtful and very informative presentation. You've certainly made people more aware of what it is that administrative assistants do. The board has always welcomed information about the work our employees do, and over the years we've heard presentations from a wide variety of groups, and these presentations have almost always been valuable additions to our meetings because they give board members a greater understanding and appreciation of the work that's being done in our schools by a large number of specialized groups. However, presentations that include budget implications fall into a different category. The board has a well-established budget process, and in my opinion, requests that have budget implications rightfully should be brought forward through the budget process so that it can be dealt with in a manner that is equitable to all groups that are making requests that have a budgetary component. And that's not to denigrate what you've told us tonight. The information that you have given us is extremely valuable for us, but it's my belief that this request needs to be dealt with within the budget process, as all requests, I think, of a budgetary nature should be. But thank you so much for your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for your advice. I appreciate it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, we will move on then to the Serge Narrows Community Association Pavilion. You have that in your board package. Item 8E, obviously. It's quite a detailed proposal.
Yes, and Chair Kerr, I can speak to it a little bit if you like.
Please do.
Yeah, so the Serge Narrows Community Association is donating a pavilion to be placed on site for the use of both the community and the school at Serge Narrows. We have provided a site survey to situate it, but they are looking for formal board support for it. I'm not positive that's for a funding request that they have. Their funder requires confirmation that the board is in support of it. As far as siting and placing, we will likely take out a low to no cost license to occupy with them to cover some of the paperwork and liability regarding that. So it's not as much as a request to cite it as it just is board support for some of their funding purposes.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Trustee Eddy.
I think this is a great show on behalf of the school district in support of that tiny school in Serge Narrows and the community that it supports. I'm very happy to support the work that the community and the educators on Serge Narrows have undergone to make this project happen and create a resource for the entire island.
Thank you. Trustee Franklin.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate the work that the community has done in providing really clear details, and they seem to have gone to a lot of work to make sure that everything is meeting all the requirements of various authorities. I think they've done a really good job of putting together this proposal, And as for myself, I support it.
Is there anyone else? Is there anyone who is opposed to this? Hearing none. I do appreciate the time and effort that went into this. This is quite thorough. I mean, for such a small community, this is a big effort. And it also shows the connection between the community and the school. So I guess in general, I think that there's unanimous support for this proposal.
Okay. So we'll draft up a letter of support from the board, and we'll have Chair Kerr sign it, and we'll get that off to them shortly after this meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I don't have this on my agenda, but I see on my screen Cortez Island Academy. Is that something that I don't see on my agenda?
Item 10.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Item 10A.
You jumped ahead of me. Okay, then we will move then to item 10 and the Cortez Island School 10-week programming options. Jeff Lonteo, if you would be prepared to begin.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Jeff Lonteo, and I'm the district coordinator for student options and opportunities, and I've been given a chance to and the opportunity to create something really unique and something really cool, if I can just use that language. It's been a treat just to and a privilege just to try to come up with a project such as this, and I would right now I'm at a point where I want to share what we've done so far. I want to share with the board so that we all know how we deliver a unique way of educating our youth in our rural areas. So I'd like to share my screen, if that's okay. We call this pilot project Cortez Island Academy, and I just wanted to go through and make sure that what I'm talking about and what I'm presenting to you tonight will be in context. So I just wanted to make sure that you know where Cortez is. I've been really fortunate to go over there a few times now, and but before this project, I really was not familiar with Cortez Island. So this is where Cortez Island is. You take the ferry to Quadra and then to Cortez, with 1,200 permanent residents there. Of course, in the summertime, it balloons 2 or 3 times bigger. Small, intimate community with homesteading and work from home citizens, peaceful lifestyle, and of course the connection to the land. And it's the connection to the land that we're really focusing with this pilot project. Our school over there opened in 1979. I did not know that, but it's a beautiful school with enrollment right now of around 50 students from K to 8. And so the project really started when we heard from the community that not having current programming there for the local grade 9s to 12 is one of the largest barriers to creating a resilient resilience to the local economy and to keep families on Cortez. We worked with several of the parents and volunteers, and they said that they're really finding it hard to keep youth on the island and families on the island because they're finding families now are going off the island to get their kids' education from grade 9 to 12, and that means that they're going over, of course, to Campbell River. However, many families are now thinking about leaving or have left Cortez Island to pursue their students and their kids' education elsewhere off the island, and so off Cortez Island. So that's something that we heard loud and clear. So therefore, what we wanted to do was to create this opportunity for students to get an education on the island. And so we're currently working with the Cortez Island Community Foundation and Folk University and the people of Cortez, and we've spoken to several families already on Cortez, and we still have a lot of work to do to make sure that we have the logistics covered in this project. However, again, I'm just here to share with you what we've done so far. So when we came up with the project, we had some givens, or we wanted to have a foundation, our core values. And I just wanted to share with you our core values, because these values will now guide us in how we're going to create our offerings to our students. So these values are immersive, hands-on, and place-based learning, connecting learning to real-life applications, the cultivation of learning and life skills, personalized education planning, and some career counseling, project and problem-based learning, understanding academics in the context of outside the classroom. So make sure that they see why we're offering what we're offering and how that relates to the context of life in the work world. We really are trying to make sure that we incorporate Indigenous learning and in our approaches. And this is really exciting, because as this program develops, we really wanted to focus on that first and foremost, simply because I think you'll see later on in what we're offering how we're really trying to make sure that we are learning from the land and from the island, the resources of Cortez, and Indigenous approaches is a huge part of that. And lastly, but certainly not least, relevance and fun. We want to make sure that we created something relevant and fun for the students. This is our really good opportunity to kick the can in a good way for our students. So this type of educational offering is only possible because when we schedule these offerings, it aligns with our local high school schedules. So when the high schools went into the quarter system, it allowed us to have a lot more freedom to offer these types of offerings in this pilot project. So it really is the semester. It takes 2 quarters, or in the old language, I guess, it takes 1 semester to offer these programs. So it's 5 months from September to January, at the end of January. In the 5 months, there are 4 modules, which lines up with the 4 quarters in our local high schools. Each module is 5 weeks, and the main focus is experiential learning and place and project-based learning. So really what we want to do was learn from the resources of Cortez, the people and the land and the sea. And you'll see this, it's really exciting, and I'm really excited to share this with you. I mentioned 4 modules. The first module, the first 5-week module, is leadership, outdoor recreation, and local ecology. So in this module, in the first 5 weeks, so in September 2022 is when the program starts. The students will use the medium of kayaking to learn about the land, to learn about outdoor education, to learn about it's really to learn about food and prep planning, overnight hiking, using and learning from the land and the water, really learning from Cortez, and that is the overall idea of this pilot project. So survival skills to marine navigation to overnight kayaking, really using their curiosity, students' curiosity, to learn about the local ecosystem. And so that the potential credits then will be a PE credit and or leadership credits. So this is a great way for us to teach those two curriculums. The second module will be, it's called our Oceans, Aquaculture and Stewardship. So this is a chance for students to explore and learn about the marine environment, because obviously on Cortez Island, the marine environment is one of the industries, main industries on that island. So in this module then, there's a connection and relationship with the marine environment. Students will dive deep into that and get a chance to dive deep. Indigenous perspective. This is when students will start to get to know really local knowledge keepers on the island. So we're going to build in lessons using local knowledge keepers and local stewards on the island. So they'll explore and research types of fisheries and aquaculture, and of course the marine ecology and climate change, how that affects the local economy and or the local resources on Cortez. And of course the potential credit for this is their science. The third module, 5-week module, is an exciting one because this is a chance for students to really find their voice. And what I mean find their voice is we give them English skills, but we also give them critical thinking skills and writing skills and vocal skills, presentation skills, so that what we want to do was we're going to use journalism, we're going to use essay writing, we're going to use podcasting, we're going to use a little bit of video, but oral storytelling to get their thoughts and see how their thoughts develop. And this gives them the space to research, to find, and then to tell, and then to celebrate. So this is an exciting, I'm really looking forward to this module. The last 5-week module will be filmmaking, and in this module, it's a continuation of the truth-telling module. However, they will use filmmaking as a medium to tell their story. And in this module, we're also going to use the local knowledge keepers, Indigenous knowledge keepers, as mentors. We're going to use other mentors from the island, and this is where we use the resources of the island, not only the physical resources, but also the people resources. And this is we're going to use the mentorship system to get knowledge for the kids, and then for the students, and then they get to retell their findings through video. And in this module, they will get media design credits. There are more steps and more things to do. Right now, I'm working with the local facilitators and really the local experts to take our offerings, and what we're going to do is just make sure that the big ideas and learning standards and the competencies match up with what we're offering, so that therefore we can create a robust education path and robust lessons, so that we can give them credits for these offerings. Assessment and evaluation is something that we still need to do. So I went to a recent Pro-D session on assessment. We have awesome experts in this district already that we can use as a resource to help with assessment and evaluation practices for this academy. Logistics, that's more things to do. Just learning beyond the classroom walls was a theme, again, to use people resources and the resources of the island, the physical resources of the island, and it's just not the classroom. Therefore, there are logistics in using that medium of education, and the do's and don'ts and how-tos and all that kind of stuff we still need to do. Transportation and learning space, those are decisions that we still have to make. So there's much to do right now, where the schools, the local high schools, are currently doing their course selections. So we're going to be part of that to market the program. Part of the marketing of the program is we've teamed up with our international education department, and we wanted to attract international students from around the world to this academy and to Cortez Island and to School District 72. So we want to be on the map with this one, but there's much to do. It's exciting. We're working with parents and volunteers on the island, and this is what we've done so far.
Thank you, Mr. Lonteo. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the presentation? Trustee Franklin.
So would it be expected that students from Campbell River would go billet over on Cortez for the time that so it would be open to Campbell River students as well as Cortez and international students?
Yes, correct. We're going to help with building or homestay options for those students, for the local students. What we're thinking is, you know what, it's going to be local Cortez students wanting their friends to come over to take advantage of this offering, and they'll stay at their houses. So we're going to help facilitate if we need to facilitate any homestays.
Okay, Trustee McMahon.
Yes, thank you. I can see that this would be a really exciting project to undertake. The schedule that you outlined, though, took you from September to January. So I'm wondering, is there a plan to then extend from January to June, or is it just postponing the challenges of these older students getting the credits they require until January instead of September? Can you address that concern?
That's a great question. We still need to, like I said, there's much to do, and questions to be answered and things to research. So what to do for the second semester, or that's the old language, but quarter 3 and quarter 4, we still need to develop programs for that. Yeah, so thank you for that question.
Anyone else? Trustee Eddy.
Great proposal for program, Jeff. I think that it might meet a number of needs as addressed by the Cortez community. That being said, have you got a targeted grade level for this academy, or will it be open to all grade levels, and will they receive academic credit in their current grade?
We're targeting grade 9s to 12. So this is secondary school. So we don't give credits for grade 9s, but we're going to meet the academic standards for grade 9s, whether it's socials or PE. That's the beauty of individualized education, is that we can really tailor their educational needs and their the competencies. But for grade 10s, 11, 12s, that's when, of course, they get credits, and so we certainly need to line up the competencies, the learning standards, to what is being offered, and we're currently doing that right now.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I just have a comment that I spent the last 2 years of my career, from 2007 to 2009, as a principal of Cortez School, and Superintendent Morrow followed me in that position. So we have some experience, and what you are proposing is something that I think has been sorely needed for a long time. But given the realities of education finance, you can't run a full meal deal secondary school for 10 or 12 kids. So this kind of will meet some of the need anyway. And I guess my question to you is, you're planning on running this for a 5-month period, or are you planning on doing it repeating it for the second half for another group, or are you planning on adding 4 additional modules and doing it as a whole year? Or is that something to be determined still?
That is something to be determined. As far as what we wanted was to make sure that this program, as far as finances, this program is self-sufficient. So through enrollment, what we wanted was, what does success look like? It is between 15 and 20 students, and that will hopefully help fund the program. We're also working with the community to do to find some grants. So some community members are already doing that, to find some grants to help subsidize the offerings.
My experience on Cortez showed me that there are a large number of incredibly talented and knowledgeable people. So being able to hook into that, I guess, a reservoir of expertise on the island is valuable for the students, but it also builds a stronger relationship between the community and the school. So I wish you every success in it.
Thank you.
Anyone else had any comments or questions? Well, thank you very much, Jeff. That was a terrific presentation, and I look forward to hearing how things develop as you get closer to implementing it.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we will then move into item 11, which is the budget bylaw amended. The budget bylaw, the amended 2021-22 annual operating budget. Did you want to? I got something strange happening on my. Oh, okay, we're back to normal again. Secretary Treasurer Patrick, did you want to address this before I propose the motion?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I would be very happy to present the board's final budget for 2021-22. Of course, we are looking for the board to support a budget in the amount of $79,391,862. The board is required to provide a final budget that's passed by February 28th. But if I would like to go through some of the budget and present it open for discussion before the board proceeds with a bylaw. So this is our amended budget. It's a final budget. The board does 2 budgets per year, and this, of course, is the one that works with the actual numbers that we know. We prepare a preliminary in the spring based on what we estimate the enrollment to be, the staffing to be, but we don't know what that actually is until September. Another advantage of the amended budget is we can budget for surprises. At the last meeting, of course, we provided a quarterly report that identified a lot of cost pressures that were somewhat unexpected. And the board is in a very good financial position that we were able to absorb some of those through savings. And I'll show you a little bit of the impact of that. So now this is a combined budget. the advantage of the document I presented to you last week is it just focuses on operating. This budget, this page right here, statement 2, covers the operating, which the board has lots of control, discretion, staffing levels, and so forth. It also includes the capital, which really focuses on amortization of grants and amortization of expenses. Board has less control in that. And then the special purpose fund, which are grants that are provided to the district, but the district is told exactly what and how to use those. All of that rolls into this right here. So just very, very quickly move through this. The other thing that is something to note is I really like to speak about the difference between the preliminary budget and the final budget, because any changes in that are what we as a district need to make and be prepared to make right now. What this budget here compares to is it compares to the amended budget of last year. So when we take a look at FTE and we're comparing this year's FTE to last year's FTE, you can see that we actually increased by 107 FTE. But if you recall at the beginning of this year, we had planned for about 5,680 students, and we came in a little bit less. So, so that definitely had a bigger impact on this year, this final budget, than what the difference was between last year. But just sort of as a point of reference, from last year to this year, our grants went up by about $2.5 million. Our expenses went up quite a little bit more, I guess about 2 million. So we're talking 1.5 increase in revenue and $2 million increase in expense. And that has left us with a deficit of $3.19 million that we've had to borrow. And overall, this budgeted deficit surplus for the end of the year being combined, it really doesn't describe a lot. I'll touch on the $3.1 million deficit a little bit later and some documents as we go back. So heading down, there's an important page on Schedule 1, but we'll skip over it and we'll come back to it. So the operating Schedule 2. So this is really where some of the impacts of our cost pressures are reflected. We can see within this that our overall revenues went up by about $3 million, with some big changes being in the provincial grants from the Ministry of Ed. So that would have reflected that 107 FTE students, as well as some increases in special education. This really highlights the international program bouncing back this year. 60 something students, but you can see the impact, the positive impact on revenue. Now last year we did have some students, and because there was a healthy surplus in international, they were actually able to keep their staff fully employed through the year and get them prepared to make a bigger impact this year. And you can see a small drop. Well, actually, this is a small drop overall, but significant within the investment income dropping. And then on the expenses, these are split by function areas, not just by wages and expenses, but again, you can see our total expenses went up $3.4 million from last year. So this really kind of highlights our budgeted prior year appropriation, because with the cost pressures identified last board meeting, we're sitting at about a $2 million operating deficit this year. So that includes the $1 million for the TTOC increases that we had spoken to. But it also includes about $400,000 in other inflationary pressures that we had faced. The difference, we have an additional $1.1 million that was planned spending that adds up to that $3.1 million draw. Just down here is our transfers over to for some of the capital purchases. Now moving on, and this just gives us a little bit more detail. It doesn't get really detailed into some of the breakdown of the operating grant from the Ministry of Ed, which is the majority of our funding, but it does again break out the international. Now, a big item that sometimes I get questioned on is the funding from First Nations. So you can see that the ministry ensures that we receive full funding, but we have agreements with our local nations where they will actually provide the equivalent of tuition. So how the ministry shows it is they show a reduction at the top, they call it a recovery, but really it's the same amount that we receive lower down. So if we weren't getting it directly from the nation, then we would be getting it from the Ministry of Ed. So moving on to the next page. So we have, and again, this is where at the last meeting, the quarterly budget could really highlight what we had planned was going to happen this year and what didn't happen. Because in comparing it to last year, our TTOC costs or for identified budget was actually $1.1 million. So it's not quite a full doubling of the TTOC budget, but you can see the increase right there. Now, we're keeping a very close eye on that, and January was 2.5 times the budget. February, we're expecting about the same. So our best estimate right now is we will require about $2 million in TTOC coverage costs. Then down in this other supplies, we had various inflationary adjustments for things like software licensing has gone up. We no longer buy a textbook, we've got to pay a license for it. Your phone system is on license, network services is on license. A lot of things are moving to licensed services rather than purchase. So we've had to make an increase for that, about $100,000. We've had to make some various fuel and contract increases for inflation. And another big one is our bus transportation repairs. We've had to increase that by about $100,000. So just looking at the difference though, the difference between the total expenses last year and even with the inflationary increases, the total services and supplies doesn't go up that much. Well, a big reason for that was some of the supports that we got last year through our COVID grants, the provincial grants. So it really kind of skewed some of what we reported last year because we had some substantial grants. Now moving on, these schedules right here just provide a lot of detail between the different breakdowns on our functions. We get into special purpose funds, and this is special purpose fund every year continues to become a bigger and more important part of the contribution of services to the district. And as well as, I guess there's also a catch to it, which is when the ministry asks us to provide more service, they make sure that it's targeted to that dollar so that it can't be used for certain things. So obviously, if it gets identified and it's in here, it can be used for what is in here, but it doesn't necessarily support things like just general maintenance, building, utilities, overhead, HR, finance, and payroll. So it kind of comes as a double edge because these items are targeted. Special purpose has a mix of ministry targeted as well as school targeted and other community-based targeted funds. So some of the funds that I kind of want to highlight here are community links. So community links is a $600,000 program for us. You can see our school generated funds have a substantial flow through at our schools, but that remains with them. We've got a learning improvement fund of $200,000. And something that you can also see here is really the way we report it is the revenues match the expenses, and for all of these programs. So you can see some of them vary just a bit, and the balance might grow or shrink based on that. But generally, when we budget to spend what we receive. Moving down, another big program that we have is our Classroom Enhancement Fund. So this was the re-implementation of contract language. So rather than it being provided to us where it just goes into general operating grants, they say specifically that we have to spend it solely on the re-implementation positions, and we also have to report on it. So again, this is the point of like $7.5 million worth of services is what comes out of this. So it's grown substantially from like a couple million a few years ago to a very, very large amount. Now going down, so this is the last portion that flows into the budget. It is the capital. So a lot of numbers here, but really what most of it is we have to amortize an asset over its useful life. So that shows up in this section for expenses, but often we get grants to help pay for it, and we are allowed to amortize the grants to match the expense and kind of offset. So the total difference is about $388,000 that you saw earlier. So that, I'm just going to go back to one other thing that I want to show to the board, which is Schedule 1. So again, I had spoken to how good of a financial position the board was in previously that has allowed the board to really have a structural deficit spend to support services and try to give as much to students and into the classroom as we can. But this year, with some of the unforeseen costs, it has taken our combined surplus, our combined savings at the beginning of the year was $4.5 million. And through all the cost overruns, we will be at $1.38 million left in surplus. So we're not having as much of a cushion as we used to. We may want to consider not using a third of the budget savings at this next budget that's coming up. So it's definitely something that we have to be careful and aware of. And until we get a better handle of say what cost use is going to be, we're going to have to, I would recommend that we be more conservative for it. So currently, as I mentioned earlier, we have a operating deficit of $2 million, which would not be able to be sustained with the savings that's in place. I believe that TTOC amount, the $1 million, will likely be able to reduce that to about $500,000 increase for next year. So I still think that we'll probably be at about a $1.5 million deficit next year. So heading into this budget, next year's budget, it will be a different year for our school district, as we haven't had to look at possible reductions. There's another report that I'll present a little bit later that also speaks to something that could have impacted our helped with a budget, but unfortunately this year may not. So I'll just stop sharing that, see if there's any questions. Yes, trustee. Oh, sorry. Eddie?
Hi, Kevin. A couple of questions, not specifically directed towards the budget, but something that has come up for me. When we talk about the LEA funding for Indigenous kids, so the province funds the head count, then they draw it back, and the nations contribute that amount on behalf of their learners as like a tuition. Is there a difference? Is the money that the nations contribute federal funding as opposed to provincial funding?
Correct. So the amounts are supposed to be equal, but the source of funding is different. The nations receive their funding from the federal government, whereas the Ministry of Ed is all provincial funding.
Thanks, Kevin. And one more question, and this is asking you to look into your crystal accounting ball. So as the Ministry of Education pushes into childcare through the K-12 sector, do you anticipate that funding for that will come through a special purpose fund, or will it come from a cost recovery model, or will it be a headcount on enrollment?
So I would guess.
It's your crystal ball.
Yes, the crystal ball says that it for sure will be targeted. Now, it's important to note, though, that childcare funding likely means a lot of just daycare fees from families as well. So it will be something very different for the school district, in that we typically have received from single and very few sources collection of funds. And so there may be a whole new sheet, like a whole new document for us to complete when it comes to budget and finances, to help identify and share what's there. There's going to be a lot happening, and a lot of it impacts services to those families. We haven't had any indication of how it'll be handled yet. I know that some school districts are already running childcare programs, and I believe it just rolls into the operating, but that's not government funded. So when the government funding comes, it'll likely be a special purpose fund, and hopefully we don't have to split it up into multiple sections. Hopefully we can keep it all together so that we can share with the board what's happening, how big of a program it is, and get an idea as to how many kids it's helping and families it's helping.
Thanks, Kevin, for your prediction.
This is Daryl.
Yes.
Hello, this is Daryl.
Yep, go ahead, Daryl.
Go ahead, Daryl.
Have we started to identify, when we talk about a structural deficit, we try to spend the money where the government is giving us the money. Do we know the areas that we're spending that extra money in, so that we can begin to reduce in areas that, so that our structural deficit becomes zero?
Well, at the end of the day, we don't have much of a choice. We will have to get to that 0 point. Now, within that $2 million, there is some COVID related expenses that will likely be able to back out. But there isn't, I wouldn't say there's any excess. I think every time an item was selected to be supported by the board, it was important or is important. So there will be some difficult conversations and difficult budget process conversations to have around this as we move forward. I think any reduction has a significant impact, but there's not going to be an easy place to find that. But that's why we have consultation. That's why we talk with a lot of different partners, and the budget process plan is also in today's agenda that we can go over. So.
Okay.
Well, I think it's good to have this conversation simply because I think that people need to understand the complexities of a massive budget of nearly $80 million, and that to only end up with a $1.3 million a cushion puts us in a fairly precarious place, and that when it comes budget time, we should be looking how we can all help maintain what we have and really identify what we need and what we have to have.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? It seems to me that a larger and larger part of this budget is becoming really prescriptive. So it's, yes. Government control is, the tentacles are reaching into districts all across the province.
Yeah.
Okay, so we shall, right, if there are no other questions, then we will move to a proposed motion, and the proposed motion is that that the budget bylaw for the amended annual 2021-2022 budget in the amount of $79,391,862 be given all required readings at this meeting, and for this motion unanimous approval is required. So do we have a mover for that motion? Okay, Trustee Eddy, seconded by Trustee McMahon. Okay, so is there any discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor either raise your hands or say aye so that I know that everybody can vote.
Aye.
2, 4.
Aye.
Okay. All right, is there anyone opposed? Okay, the motion is passed unanimously, so we can now move on to the readings. So, first reading, that the budget bylaw for the amended 2021-2022 budget in the amount of $79,391,862 be given first reading. Could I have a mover for that, please?
Hagan.
Trustee Franklin, seconded by Trustee Eddy. Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Or raise your
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Is there anyone opposed? All right, the motion is carried. For the second reading, that the budget bylaw for the amended annual 2021-2022 budget in the amount of $79,391,862 be given second reading. Moved by, okay, Trustee Franklin, and seconded by Trustee Briggs. Thank you.
Sure.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor either say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, is there anyone opposed? All right, the motion is carried. Okay, that the bylaw for the amended annual 2021-2022 budget in the amount of $79,402,362, pardon me, $79,391,862 be given third reading, passed and adopted. All those in, or is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor, either raise your hand or say aye.
I think you need a mover and seconder.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, my fault. Get into this. Okay, moved by Trustee Wilson, thank you. Seconded by Trustee McMahon, thank you. Okay. Okay, is there any discussion on this? Okay. All those in favor, either raise your hand or say aye.
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 Opposed?
Go ahead.
Opposed? None? Okay. The motion is passed and adopted.
Thank you, everybody. I would like to thank our Assistant Secretary Treasurer, Renee McNeil. Basically, when we got that December quarterly report and saw what happened, let's say I asked a lot of her, and she has spent countless hours investigating, following up, checking with all sorts of principals and managers to identify exactly what was going on with a budget, and so that we could make a plan for it, a plan not only for the amended budget, but start to help get us ready for planning for next year.
Thank you very much. A lot of work has gone into this, and it's going to be some tough times, I think, next year. Okay, we will then move on to item 13, which is the business administration. Hang on just a minute. I got to get my, sorry, 13A. Okay, enrollment forecast. Secretary Treasurer Patrick.
Yes, so I'll share my screen again. So this is our enrollment forecast that we had to submit February 15th. So this is what our preliminary budget is based off for next year. We do an estimate on how many students we think we're going to get. We send it to the ministry, they match it up with their funding amounts, and then they send it back to us in estimated grants. So there's a lot here. I tried, hopefully I've increased it. Hopefully it is visible, but really they asked for a 3-year estimate. This column right here, column C, is basically what occurred this year. And then column D is what we think will happen next year, and column E is what the ministry thinks will happen next year. So the beginning section is summer school, which we don't know what that'll be, but we usually try to balance it so that it costs neutral. But when we look at our school age enrollment, we do see that we're having a 46 FTE increase in school-aged enrollment. So we're actually seeing and forecasting a somewhat good increase in our bricks and mortar school, but we are seeing a decrease in our DL. So we have changed our DL program, and we do not offer 10 to 12 DL anymore. So based on COVID, we have had a very healthy K-9 DL program, which we expect to scale back a little bit, but really continue. Now, one thing to point out is we are projecting, we're projecting 46 FTE increase, but the ministry was projecting 73. So some of what I've noticed and what we've noticed through the school year is we're not quite getting the increases that we had expected to get. Pre-COVID, we were actually growing at a good, healthy size increase, 80 to 100 students per year, and the ministry is continuing that trend by saying that we will grow by 73. But some of the in-migration of students we haven't quite been seeing. I don't know if it's a housing availability issue or if it's a COVID-related issue, but if we plan for 46 and we end up with 73, that's better. We can add some of those resources. If we were to plan for 73 and we ended up with 46, it's a lot harder to reduce once September has come. And as just presented earlier, with the financial situation heading into next year, the district will have less ability to absorb those types of drops. Looking at our special needs funding, we expect some slight reductions between them. So right now we're projecting like a $316,000 increase through the student K to 12 FTE. We're expecting about $250,000 drop through special needs. And then when we get down to DL programs, again, some of our 10 to 12 DLs we had and the ministry was projecting students, but because we know we're not running it, we've had to zero those out. So, unfortunately, our revenues are likely to be equal next year to this year. The unfortunate part with that is we weren't able to outgrow our deficit. So One of the ways to have reduced that $1.5 million operating deficit would have been if we added 150 students or 100 students. When you add students, you do need to add supports, student supports to that, but often these supports don't cost quite as much as what the grants bring in. So unfortunately, again, that leads to a tough budget heading into next year.
Thank you very much, Secretary Treasurer Patrick. And we will call on you again for our facility expansion report.
Yeah, so this one, we tried really hard to see if we could find alternates to this request, but we haven't been able to. Ocean Grove is one of those schools that's growing. It does look like this next year will likely be their peak year. Before they kind of stabilize. So we have identified the need for a portable at Ocean Grove, and we require board funds to support it. So this doesn't come from the operating, it comes from local capital. There is a little bit of savings in the local capital that the board can use. So I'm looking for a motion from the board to support the use of $300,000 to purchase and install a portable.
Okay, the suggested motion is that the board directs the Secretary Treasurer to draw up to $300,000 from local capital to increase classroom space at Ocean Grove to meet the needs of the projected enrollment growth for September 2022 at that school. Do we have a mover for that, please? Trustee Franklin, do we have a seconder? Anyone?
Hagan.
Okay, okay. Trustee Hagan. Okay. Is there any discussion on this?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Kevin, you were saying that you felt that the growth is going to peak with this last portable?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Further questions? Okay, all those in, oh, sorry, Trustee Eddy.
Is there a way to address the ampage in schools, the number of kids attending schools through any other mechanism besides adding classrooms, additional classrooms and portables and stuff? Would that be like a boundary conversation?
So yeah, so you can look at boundary changes. The choice with boundary changes though, or the big question is whether you grandfather students like brothers and sisters, siblings of students that would otherwise have to be moved. And so kind of looking at the total time for that to take full effect, it could be a 4 or 5 year transition to accommodate some of that. But yes, there is some ability to do boundary changes that could absorb. Now, we do have a school expansion application in for Ocean Grove. We also have one in for Ripple Rock. It is likely that even by purchasing this portable, that it will be required for Ripple Rock as we go future years. So once we have it in our inventory, we can move them around to accommodate other areas of growth, because boundary changes would help, and it would definitely probably, I don't know if it would fully solve the situation at each school, but it would definitely help.
And what's the lifespan of a portable? Like, how many times can you move it, and what's a typical lifespan of a portable?
If you maintain them, they can last a while. Every time you move it, though, it does cause a degradation. I don't know. We're actually pretty fortunate with our seismic projects that we were able to bring in portables and remove old ones and replace them with newer ones. I think they can last quite a long time, but I don't want to commit to that because it's not really, I think, a long-term goal of the district. I think long-term goal is to seek expansion funds and have, you know, classrooms that are attached to the school is a preference, and or boundary changes to get everybody in a classroom in a building. So they're kind of a backup, but they are a necessary part of growth, as the Ministry of Ed seems to wait for a number of portables to be on a school site before approving funding. And that's evidenced in some of the very fast growing metro districts and South Island districts.
Thank you, Kevin.
Go ahead, Trustee Hagan.
Yeah, just one more question. Do we know where the growth is coming from? Is it coming from south, or is it just general population just in that area?
So I believe there is the new construction is attracting, and Stories Beach. So Stories Beach seems to be a more affordable area for families, but there are with the new construction kind of in the Jubilee, Ocean Grove area seems to be attracting students. But once that construction is complete, which should be shortly, there may be a bit of a pause for growth there. And in our town, we're expecting that growth to move to Ripple Rock area.
Trustee Franklin.
I think it's worth mentioning that these new portables are quite nice. If a child's attending school and is going to a portable, they're going to a clean, warm, pleasant place. You know, quite different from the converted chicken coop I taught in 1979, but they're quite nice now, and there's no problem with going to school on portable.
Thank you, Trustee Franklin. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. And if you're not on the screen, say aye.
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 Right. It's all of you, so the motion is carried. We'll move on to item 13C, which is guiding principles for decision making and the budget cycle 2022-2023. Again, Secretary Treasurer Patrick.
Yes, so this is just something that, again, we started doing quite a while ago that asks the board to support a certain guideline of budget principles. You know, for new people coming on board as part of the budget process, we have some new groups that are coming aboard as part of the budget process this year. We'll share it out, and I think it does lay some of the groundwork of what the board's looking for and how to approach things. One item on that list that might be more significant this year is there's a line that says we will plan annually to manage the contingency reserve level, allowing us to ensure operational effectiveness and to manage the risks towards our school district and student learning. So again, in the past, we've taken an approach of using 1/3 of the unrestricted surplus. We may want to reconsider, and I may make the recommendation to reconsider that for this next year to provide a bit more of a safety net until we get more certainties in some of our costs.
Everyone has received that that page, guiding principles, so you've had a chance to look at it. The proposed motion is that the board adopt the guiding principles for decision-making budget cycle 2022-2023 as presented. Could we have a mover for that, please? Trustee Eddy, seconder by Trustee Wilson. Discussion, please.
Yes, I would. This is Daryl.
Yes.
I would imagine that our strategic plan is front and foremost in where we're going with our budget, how we want to spend it within that.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Trustee Franklin.
One of the things that I'm wondering about is, you know, the current the budgetary challenges that we're going to face in the coming year. One of the things that I think is has caused that is that we've had large increases in costs due to COVID-19 with regard to, hiring TTOCs. We asked our staff, please don't come to school when you're sick, and they have been very good about that. And as a result, the level of infection in our schools has been very low. And we've done a very, very good job in School District 72, protecting the kids, taking care of our staff. Now, these costs, these increased costs, is there some way that those costs could be calculated and that we could let the ministry know that we've had these increased costs, and is there some way that they could help us with those costs? Because if we're spending money to, cover sick leave that was not really budgeted for by either us or the government, in that for that matter, shouldn't there be some consideration given to the fact that school districts are going to be struggling next year to present a balanced budget, considering the fact that we've had such increased costs for TTOCs? And I would also think that as we go forward, yes, COVID will eventually subside somewhat, but there is a new mindset out there, and I think it's a mindset that is one that is a change for the good, but a change forever. And that change is that when people are sick, they should not come to work. And I know in the past, there's some former teachers on this board, and we came to school when we were sick as a dog, and we thought we were doing the right thing. But now we know that it's not the right thing to do. Is there some way that we could calculate the increased costs of COVID that have not been covered by the government, and just let the minister know that in order for us to maintain programs that we have now, those additional costs for sick have got to be covered?
So I can share that we do submit a quarterly report. Maybe it's a semi-annual report to the ministry, identifying what our COVID-related spending is. And this last one, I had submitted the report. We got the December quarterly just after. I asked if I could amend that report, and I added basically $500,000 increase in TTOC costs. So, and it's important to point out that there was some COVID-related funding for ventilation. There was some COVID-related funding through a holdback, as well as the board had supported through the carry forward 170. So there was almost $500,000 worth of COVID-related funding and board supports already in place, and the budget pressures we're facing are in excess of that. So obviously there's about $1 million in TTOC costs for this year. There will likely be $500,000 going forward, and I think even amongst supplies and labor, we would probably still have another $200,000 in COVID-related costs this year that weren't covered through funding. So I am reporting it. Now, again, the request for funding, though, is probably at best to come through board channels. As again, so the ministry won't be surprised at what our costs are.
Trustee Eddy?
I wonder if it's worth contacting BCSTA about compiling the cost to education through COVID on a provincial level and begin asking them to lobby the province for some kind of, I know that there's only so much money, but I don't know that the province, I don't know that the public knows how much COVID has actually cost education. And I think it would be worth asking BCSTA to compile a report like that.
Okay. Might also be worthwhile doing a late motion to the AGM as well, for debate as well, because there are 60 districts that are facing this issue, not just us. So it seems to me that in addition to finding that information, it might be something that would be incorporated into an AGM motion. But we'll have to decide on that at another time. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor that the board, I'm sorry, no, we don't. I'm losing track here. Let's see. Let me go back. We're still on C, aren't we? Because I've lost track here. All right, thank you, Joyce. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye if you're not visible.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion is passed. And we will now move into item 13D, and that's the draft 22-23 annual operating budget development schedule. And again, Secretary Treasurer Patrick.
Yeah, so this is just the beginning of the preliminary budget plan or process for next year. The layout for the upcoming year is going to be very similar. We will continue. Last year was the first of our student budget sessions. We're planning to continue that this year, as well as a new addition will be the addition of the Indigenous Education Advisory group. We'll do a budget meeting with them as well this year. So this is just for information. It is a draft, and we'll look for it to be, the budget process to be concluded for May 31st.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Secretary Treasurer Patrick on this? Okay, thank you very much. And we will then move to item 13E, which is finance warrant number 7, January 31st, 2022. Secretary Treasurer Patrick, once again.
Just looking for a motion for support for January's finance warrant.
Okay, the suggested motion is that finance warrant number 7 dated January 31st, 2022 be accepted as presented, moved by Trustee Franklin, seconded by Trustee Eddy. Is there any discussion or comment on this? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion raise your hand or say aye.
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 Okay, opposed? The motion is carried. Okay, so we would then go to the District Parent Advisory Committee Liaison Update. Trustee McMahon.
Yes, I think that the district advisory group is very happy to have both Phil and I there. I think there was some question a meeting or two ago where they wanted to know why the students had a leadership committee that had sort of the direct ear of senior management, and why parents wouldn't be offered the same opportunities. And so I think Phil and I were able to describe to them how the district parent advisory committee, because Phil and I sit there, is kind of a conduit for PACs to take their concerns to the district, and then for them to be aired there in a way that we might be able to witness those concerns or address those concerns in some way and bring issues that might be of special importance to family, to the business that we do, you know, whether that's in discussions that come up as agenda items, or, you know, maybe the way that we think about the budget, or and I think they were happy with that. We also reminded them that parents do have a special role to play during the budget process, and that in other areas when there's been a need for instance, a review, or sometimes in the performance evaluation of senior management, parent representatives have taken part in those. So I don't know, maybe Phil has some more to add to that, but I think they are feeling quite happy to have us there.
I think you captured everything.
Are there any questions or comments on Trustee McMahon's report? None? Thank you very much. Thank you for your efforts on that committee, and thank you for the report. Then we will move on to the next item, which is the Equity Committee update. And who is going to take that one? Trustee Eddy or Trustee McMahon? Trustee Eddy?
I can do it, John. So just as an update, the Equity and Action Committee did get together to meet on February 9th. And we have a really broad representation from across our district, all of our employee groups, our Principals and Vice Principal Association, senior leadership team, Indigenous education workers, and a lot of the members of our Indigenous Advisory Committee. I really want to compliment Deb on her work pushing forward on this provincially suggested mandate. So I just wanted to remind the board that we are committed to ensuring Indigenous students see their culture reflected in our schools and classrooms, and we acknowledge the importance of Indigenous language and culture for student success. The Equity and Action Committee, that is their work. Their work is to ensure equity of education for all of our learners. So the most recent update, it's been a while since we've gotten together, and ideally the next time we meet, it will be in person. So there has been a survey that's gone out to staff. There were 32 questions, equity questions on the survey, and the results were released to the Equity and Action Committee. We have lots of work to do, and the staff acknowledges that there is lots of learning to be done and lots of understanding and examining of personal biases. But I believe that there is a commitment across our entire system to creating equitable learning solutions for all of our kids.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Okay, well, we've come pretty close to the end of the meeting. We'll then move on to the last item, which is questions from anyone present on agenda items for this meeting. Mr. Carrier, do we have any questions? Or sorry, no, Ms. Patrick, do we have any questions?
We had one question that came in from Julina on behalf of the QP presentation that you heard earlier this evening, but she was asking for clarification on when the deadline is for budget presentations, in follow-up to I think your comments following her presentation that would be a better avenue. It looks as though Secretary Treasurer Patrick may have privately answered her. Maybe if you could just confirm that.
Yes, I accidentally deleted it. So hopefully the reply went through, but if there's a report available, we love to have all the reports as part of the budget package. So if we could have that by April 1st, and as many employee groups or stakeholder groups want to include their requests, the more work that they do preparing for it to share with the Budget Function Committee, the better. So yeah, if we have it up early, we share it with everybody on the committee. So
reports into the Secretary Treasurer's office by April 1st.
Correct.
Okay.
About as early as possible.
Okay, and there are no other questions.
Trustee Wilson, were you going to?
Yes, I've had technical challenges throughout this public meeting and haven't been able to raise my hand or bring up a couple of points. So I did just want to add to the committee reports. There was a provincial council meeting on last Saturday, and it was the shortest one in history. There were no motions that needed to be debated. And so it was less than 2 hours long, which definitely was a provincial record. The report summary was actually sent out a few days ago, and so if you want details, you can find that in your email. But basically, the president talked about the advocacy they've been doing, a COVID update on latest information, talked about the Climate Chair Committee, the elections coming up this year, and the framework for enhancing student learning, budgeting, anti-racism, and the progress they're making along that, the anti-colonization topics. And then, of course, some reports from some of the other committees. So it was fast, it was efficient, and since it was the first sunny day in weeks, nobody complained that it was a very short meeting.
Gotta love that.
Yeah. Also, just like to mention the Pro-D committee met today, and they had a very thorough review of the events of last week, and they were very pleased with the turnout and the participation. Already started planning for next year, and I must say I'm really impressed by the inclusiveness and the consultation that they do to get all the information and feedback and input they can when they're making these decisions. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, we do. Another question has just come in. It says that it was indicated that there were new groups that will be consulted for the budget, and the question is whether we can identify who these groups are.
Yes, the new group is the Indigenous Education Advisory Council has been added. I'm going to get the opportunity to join one of their meetings and to discuss budget with them.
Okay, thank you. Are there others?
No, that's everything.
Okay, well, I think we've had enough time from the beginning to now. So, did anyone else have any comments to make on anything that came up in this meeting? Okay, then we will then move to Trustee Hagan.
Like to move adjournment?
All those in favor, raise your hands. Okay, the motion is carried. We stand adjourned. We will meet in about 5 minutes, going back to the confidential.